And it's 1:30 p.m. It's time to give you updates from the world of business. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Here's what we have for you on the program today. African interest rate ranking comes out, and Cape Verde is the one with the least interest rates on the continent. Kenya's import bill drops for the very first time since COVID-19. And in Nigeria, unclaimed dividends in the banking industry hit 190 billion naira. It's time to give you updates from the world of business. You're welcome. Let's get right into it now and see what's happening with the numbers in major equities on the continent. Starting from Africa, we can tell you that in Nigeria, it's positive at intraday. There you have it, 0.60%. South Africa is also positive, 0.23%. at 74,090.38. Looking at other parts of the continent, Egypt is looking even better, 1.14%. And then Kenya closed yesterday. Also positive, a very positive market there we see at 0.32%. We go to the Middle East now and look at the numbers right there. I think a lot of them were positive, but not all. Starting with Abu Dhabi, positive 0.12% at 9,828.57. Dubai, also positive 0.31% at 4,060.91. Other parts of that region, we have Saudi Arabia there. That's the one in red, 0.22%, and Qatar, almost 0.5%. At 0.45% at intraday, and that's positive for that market. All right, now we've been telling you about what's happening in the United Nations General Assembly, and we've had a correspondent there. 4 of them have been covering that. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes. First of all, let's see what's happening. Yeah, you have them there, Juliana Olainka. Of course, because of the time difference, we couldn't have her this morning. We do hope to have her this afternoon. Lanre Lasisi following the president right there. And remember, tomorrow, President Tinubu will be ringing the bell at the Nasdaq New York stock market right there. It's going to be an exciting time. You want to look out for it. I think about 9 p.m. Nigeria time. And then we have Ann Waldo also there. They have been very busy sending in a lot of interviews and information and events happening over there at New York. And then Maria Bird, our Washington correspondent, has also joined the team since been telling us about the preparations in New York and some other developments right there. Very busy crew we have over there in United Nations, and we hope to have more of them. I don't know if we have Juliana now join us to give us updates from today. Hi, Juliana. Well, we couldn't have you this morning, understandably, the time difference and all you've been doing. But I hear one of the conversations going on there is the issue of climate finance. Not surprising, is the topic of the world now with the flood and all that's going on. But tell us details about how this conversation, what shape it took over there at the UNGA.
Good afternoon, Innie, or should I say good morning? Good morning.
Well, good morning. Good morning to you, Juliana. Good morning to you. Good afternoon to us.
Busy. Yes, it is incredibly busy here. One of the reasons why you haven't been seeing me on your screen is because, of course, the time difference. We are 5 hours behind, but also because of the traffic. I know local New Yorkers, they always complain about the traffic, but considering there are 140 heads of state in town at the moment, it is an absolute nightmare. Security is very heightened. There are lots of protests here, namely because of what you were just referencing, which is the climate emergency. Now, the United Nations General Assembly, as we know, is a one-of-a-kind platform. This is really the only place where everybody in the world gets an equal say in what's happening and how they can perhaps forge a way forward. There are a lot of disagreements internationally at the moment. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is a big one. We're expecting the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to address the United Nations at some point today. This is going to be the first time he is addressing the UN in person. He is going to be piling the pressure on world leaders in Africa, including President Tinubu, presidents in Asia and Latin America, because they haven't, of course, spoken up against President Putin as much as he would like. So that's a huge talking point today. Also, we're going to be hearing a lot about the global cost of living crisis, artificial intelligence. The UK are also going to be hosting in the next couple of weeks the world's first artificial intelligence security summit. That's going to be taking place in London. But the major one, going back to what you initially were talking about, is the worsening climate emergency. I think that is one discussion that the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has been pushing forward with, particularly because the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 of them, which was signed in 2015, are supposed to be completed by 2030, and we're nowhere near there. We don't have the Prime Minister from the UK, Rishi Sunak, here. He's being represented by the Deputy Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden. I believe the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, will be addressing the General Assembly today, and the UK have once again committed billions of pounds to nations in the global south to mitigate against some of these effects. But there's a lot of talk, and I think that's where people are becoming fatigued with the UN. We know most of the action takes place on the sidelines anyway, but of course, this is a huge platform. So lots of expectations, lots of big names. It is going to be quite boring at some points, but there's going to be a lot of headline grabbing statements at some points too, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, before the boredom, I'm sure you have your hands filled. And I wish one of these days we could see the traffic. You know, it really look good, because sometimes residents in Lagos think it's just in Lagos that you have traffic. They don't remember that every commercial city has its own share of troubles and traffic. Well, thank you so much, Juliana. I will certainly do this again.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you. You look beautiful. If you saw me, we're wearing exactly the same outfit.
For real? That would have been nice.
Exactly the same. I'll take a picture and we'll catch up, and I will show the traffic. I was discussing that actually yesterday with the Lagos State Governor, Jide Sanwo-Olu, who is on the ground supporting President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And he did say that New York and Lagos, very, very similar. We do all have our fair share of issues and greatness too.
All right, Juliana, well done. And now, of course, we get more from all of that. As we always say, we have our 4 reporters right there in New York City. New York. They said the only city that's special has its name mentioned twice. You have Juliana, who just spoke with us there. You have Lanre Lasisi going with President Bola Tinubu. You have Anwar Odo, and then you have Maria Bird sending in reports. So you don't want to miss any moment of it right here on Channels Television. Well, let's move over now to Europe, where consumers around the globe have been worrying about inflation a lot recently. Much of it's due to higher energy prices. But while gas and electricity simply become more expensive, there's also hidden inflation, and that's costing people money. The German government is trying to stop this. What is hidden inflation? Lars Holter joins us now to give us more of that and more. Lars, good afternoon. So what's this hidden inflation?
Hi, Ini. Thanks for having me. We're talking about hidden inflation on supermarket shelves, where many companies in the food business won't just raise prices because they fear customer backlash. Instead, they are shrinking portion sizes, and that's why this phenomenon is known as shrinkflation. Now, to be fair, this is not entirely new. In fact, shrinking portion sizes has long been a strategy for some companies to improve profit margins. But it is just now that the government is targeting the practice. The Green Party's Steffi Lemke, who is Germany's Minister of the Environment, says that misleading customers is essentially fraud. It's hard to disagree if you look at some of the examples, because companies don't just sell less of a certain product, they actually keep the size of the wrapping or the box the same. Here are some examples. There's a cocoa powder named Suhat Express where the size of the box was kept the same recently, while the content went from 500 down to 400 grams. And that makes the product 25% more expensive to consumers. And it's also not just breakfast staples. There's bathroom products too, like shower gel and mouthwash. And with less product in the same old bottle, consumers are paying up to 33% more for those. That's way higher than the regular inflation rate, which most recently stood at 11% for food, for example. Now, with food being a large part of people's monthly spending, these double-digit numbers are really having an effect.
So do we expect this new law to pass?
Well, that's really hard to say at this point. As I said, a high-ranking member of the government has proposed a law to ban shrinkflation, but she's a member of the Green Party, one of three parties in a coalition government. And there's two other parties, one of them the business-friendly FDP party. And they are mostly siding with corporate interests, just like they're doing here. Their representative for consumer politics says that companies should not be regulated in terms of what they are selling and how, but that any purchase decision should be made by an educated customer. They're suggesting that customers should switch brands if they feel misled. It is, of course, kind of ironic because the entire point of shrinkflation is that customers will likely not recognize it. So for this to actually go through, it might take a while as long as the members of the three-party coalition are not on the same page.
That's a long one. What about investors? What are they doing at the markets?
Yeah, things started off on a bad note. Asian markets were down today. Much of it ties into China, that country's ailing economy, and much of that has to do with the property sector crisis there. However, there are some hopeful signs as the embattled developer Country Garden has won approval from creditors to extend repayment on an onshore bond that was due, with investors wondering how it could be satisfied. So, crisis averted for now, I guess. Well, and for the rest of the week, everyone will be looking at central bank decisions. Tomorrow we'll hear from the Fed in the US. No rate hike is expected there. Then on Thursday we'll get interest rate decisions from the Bank of England, Switzerland, Sweden and Norway. Then finally the Bank of Japan on Friday. So investors will be busy.
All right. Thank you so much. Last temporary relief you tell us there, and we'll follow the story. Thank you. Well, talking about Asia, we can say that the markets fell across board as traders paused minutes from the Reserve Bank of Australia for a policy meeting on September the 5th, where the bank had said that inflation in the country is still too high. The bank had said that further policy tightening may be required if inflation is more persistent than expected. Let's look at the numbers right there. We see that the Nikkei 225 is in the green, 0.87%. That's quite high. Very comfortable place to be, heading to 1% right there, 33,242.59. Kospi is also positive, 0.60%, 2,559.21. The Hang Seng Index is also positive, 0.37% at 17,997.17. The Shanghai is, however, on the flip side, 0.03%. It's marginal there. And then in Australia, that's where we're having this minutes of the meeting, 0.47% in the red, 7,196.60. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll head to the African continent and tell you what's happening right there. It's here on Business Incorporated. Do stay with us. Hey, welcome back. Still watching Business Incorporated here on Channels Television. We'll head over to, well, Africa mostly, and tell you what's going on there, beginning with commodity. Today's Commodities Day, and what's going on with it. And the commodity of interest today is coffee. It's one of the world's most traded commodities in West Africa. Specialty Coffee Association that's talking about Nigeria, announced the establishment of Nigerian-Canadian Coffee Exchange Corridor initiative that aims to strengthen bilateral trade between Nigeria and Canada to promote exports of Nigerian coffee. That's true. Nigeria does have that. Also, now looking at the price of coffee, as with other commodities, is risen by 6.1% to $1.59, while global food prices average 121.4 points in August, and that's down 2.10%. So a lot of questions to be asked there. What are the reasons for the estimation and the interest in coffee, and why the deviation between coffee prices and global food price index? What will have to tell us this is Halima Adedinro. She is an analyst with Financial Derivatives Company, joins us from Victoria Island. Good afternoon, Halima. Good to have you.
Good afternoon, Amy. Thanks for having me.
Great. So does it mean that coffee is not considered as food? That's why they're in opposite positions or directions when you talk about the price?
Of course, it is considered as a food. But the issue is that what is actually affecting the global food prices is not directly affecting coffee prices. And so that's why we are seeing a divergence or a contrast in their movement. For instance, in the past few months, we see that the global food prices has declined for a couple of months because we have the reduced intent of the Russia-Ukraine war. And beyond that, we see that Russia has increased its supply of grain to the global market. But when it comes to coffee, there is a particular thing that is peculiar to coffee, which is weather. So we could see that weather has been disrupted over some few months now, which is affecting not only the harvest, but the outlook or projection for the next harvesting year. So as a result of this, we'll see that the reduced supply is causing the spike in the price of coffee that we'll see in the global market. And also there is a projection or estimation that the demand for coffee would increase in the next year because there's an expectation that, for instance, U.S. economy would improve, which could increase the opening of coffee shops, which could increase the demand for drinks like coffee, on-the-go drinks like coffee. So all these factors would increase the supply, so to speak, in the coming year. So, and because weather has disrupted the harvest in the present year, we are seeing a decline in supply in the global market, which is pushing up the price in the global market as well.
All right. And you talked about some of those huge countries that are huge in the production of coffee, like Brazil. They become more reluctant in exporting coffee. How do we see this affecting companies whose raw material is majorly coffee?
So, like I said, Brazil is the top producing and exporting country of coffee. But Nestle has put in place a plan which is called the regenerative agriculture, and it is based on improving the health of the soil, which will in turn increase the yield per hectare of land, and of which coffee is one of the products that is being focused on. So, but with this, we will not see an immediate effect, so to speak, but in the coming years, this policy would tend to increase the supply of coffee in the market.
And in Nigeria now, well, how do we boost our production, really, especially not just exporting the raw coffee, but adding value?
Yes. For instance, now, if we look at Africa as a whole, Ethiopia, Kenya, they are all doing well when it comes to coffee markets. So one thing we need to learn first, apart from having a bilateral agreement with advanced country, is to look into how our production quality is and what are the things affecting it. For instance, that Ethiopia has a very high quality coffee because they put into details from their harvest to their sorting to their packaging. They really put so much effort into it, and it goes a long way to dictate the taste of the coffee at the long run. So Nigeria needs to look at the ways and means by which they can improve the coffee production, coffee coffee production, and the technology, so to speak. It is very important. Some of the problem we have is low coffee trees, and so many low technical know-hows in the country. So it's really affecting the output and the how can I put it, the income of farmers, which is disincentivizing more investment into that space of agriculture in Nigeria.
All right, Halima, thank you so much for sharing that perspective with us this afternoon. Halima Adedinro is an analyst with Financial Derivatives Company. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, still staying in Africa, and it's no longer news that many African countries have suffered for decades with high inflation rates and unstable economies, resulting in double-digit interest rates that discourage investors and hampered economic growth. Trading Economics, a data platform that covers 196 nations, including historical data and projections for more than 20 million economic indicators, currency rates, stock market indices, government bond yields, and commodity prices, has carried out a research on the latest interest rate. Findings shows that Cape Verde ranks African country with the lowest interest rate with 1%, followed by Seychelles with 2%. Botswana is in the third position with 4%. Now, the three countries rank 4th, 8th, and 12th globally. In Kenya this year, they've posted a drop in the value of imports for the first time since COVID-19 pandemic era, and that's because of reduced expenditure on key supplies such as materials for factories, machinery, and fuel. Fresh official data shows this. It has spent 1.46 trillion shillings, that's about $9.7 billion, on goods ordered from abroad for the first 7 months of this year, compared with 1.46 trillion shillings, that's about $9.9 billion in a similar period last year, according to the data collated by the Central Bank of Kenya. The 2.09%, about a 30.57 billion fall, has come when global prices of major imports moderated as disruptions in supply chains ease, helping to cut out the cost of shipping. Challenges in global supply chains were last year exacerbated by Russia's war in Ukraine at a time when they were yet to recover from pandemic-induced shocks. Well, we're still staying in Kenya now. The country has extended an oil supply deal with 3 Gulf-based companies to December 2024. The East African nation entered the deal with Saudi Aramco, Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, ADNOC, and Emirates National Oil Company earlier this year to try to manage demand for dollars. There was an extension up to December 2024 arising out of negotiations that have been happening to drive down the freight and premium cost. The deal has helped lower the cost of transporting oil to Kenya and the premium it pays to suppliers defending the deal. And the South African Reserve Bank Monetary Policy Committee is expected to announce a decision on whether to make any changes to lending rates. The SARB left its repo rate unchanged at 14-year high of 8.25% during its July 2023 meeting, matching expectations and marking a pause in a tightening cycle after 10 consecutive rate hikes. However, the governor notes that the decision does not represent the end of the hiking cycle. Chief economist of the Efficient Group, Dowie Roth, believes that Reserve Bank will maintain interest rates steady.
I think chances are that the Reserve Bank will decide to keep interest rates unchanged. The reasons why I think they will keep interest rates unchanged is because inflation has come down quite nicely recently. There's a bit of a possibility that inflation may tick up a little bit, but for now I think inflation is well contained below 6%. Secondly, I think that Americans are likely to keep interest rates unchanged as well, and that's important for South Africa as well. And thirdly, inflation expectations have been coming down recently, which is also a very good sign. So for now, I expect the Reserve Bank to keep interest rates unchanged. And it really depends on what's going to happen to inflation going forward, on whether the Reserve Bank will keep interest rates at these kind of levels or start cutting interest rates early next year. But for now, I expect the Reserve Bank to keep interest rates where they are.
All right, so we'll close at South Africa today and pick it up from there tomorrow. That's it on Business Incorporated for today. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Enjoy the rest of your day.